This is the Moonlight Graham Show, a freewheeling conversation with the role players, the underdogs, and guys with flat-out great stories in sports.
Hello and welcome back to the Moonlight Graham Show, where we celebrate the role players and the underdogs in sports. And this week we've got a repeat Moonlighter as Scott Siepker returns to the podcast this week to talk about his documentary film titled Kinnick, about the life of Nile Kinnick, maybe one of the top 5 most famous Iowa athletes of all time. His movie actually premiered last Thursday night. There was a really cool premiere over at the Palms Theater in Waukee. It is showing in the theaters right now at the Palms Theater in Waukee. I believe it's going to be showing for a week, at least a week, over in Iowa City during the first week of September as well. Or you can find it on Vimeo. So Scott came over to the house. We talked about this project. I think it was really interesting to dig into how you get something like this made, knowing it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of money to get something like this made, especially grassroots style like Scott's been doing it and in the state of Iowa. So he came over. We sat actually out on my deck. And you'll notice that we're sitting out on the deck because I like sometimes doing podcasts like you've seen in cars or outside, because I feel like sometimes you can hear the ambiance a little bit. This one, we actually debated taking it inside because the bugs were so loud when we started that we debated going inside. But then we're like, you know what? This is what a fall night in Iowa sounds like, and I hope our audience will feel that too, like you're reminiscing about the days of Nile Kinnick while you're sitting out on my deck with myself and Scott Siepker. So hopefully you guys really enjoyed this episode. As always, special thanks to our sponsor, The People's Company, here on the podcast. Matt Adams, Andrew Zelmer, they're the best land brokerage guys in the business, so check them out at peoplescompany.com and enjoy today's episode with Scotty Siepker. Moonlighters, are you or someone you know moving down to Kansas City? Well, if you are, the one realtor that we trust and yet you need to be calling is the great Brian Sandvig. As you well know, Brian Sandvig is our producer here on the podcast, and there is not a better residential real estate advisor down in the Kansas City marketplace than Brian Sandvig. Call Brian Sandvig, shoot him a text. Hey, DM us on social media. We'll get you connected with Brian if you can't find him on all the socials, but he is there and he is active, and he is your Kansas City realtor, so give him a call. Scott Siepker, welcome back to the Moonlight Graham Show.
It is great to be back.
The last time you were on the pod, do you remember what happened that day?
I do not.
The derecho happened that day.
That was the derecho day?
You came over the night of the derecho.
Holy cow, you're right. Wow. Okay, I remember because that's the night. Yeah, I had, like a week before that, there was a terrible storm, and it took out my tree in my front yard. And I was really sad about that. And then that night, the derecho happened. I already lost my tree, and then the power got knocked out. Big power pole went down in my backyard. We didn't have electricity for a week.
And you came over. I remember just texting you being like, hey, we can cancel this. You know, like we can rebook it.
Yeah, nah.
And I remember sending you on your way and was like, good luck.
Yeah, you have electricity? You got electricity?
Right. You should have just stayed over. We drank enough that night. You should have just crashed at my pad.
I should have just stayed here. Thanks for the invite. I guess you didn't invite me, but maybe this time. That would be weird. Now you have twins.
Now we have twins. We got another little guy. You got no room.
No, there's no room.
That would have been the time to invite you.
That was the time.
And we missed it.
We missed that opportunity, but, at least we have that memory together.
So we had the derecho night, and this time around, it's another special night. Tomorrow, 24 hours from right now, your documentary film, Kinnick, is going to be premiering at the Palms Theater in Waukee. How are you feeling right now with that happening 23 hours from now?
I hope it's a healthy balance of excitement and terror. Not only is the film going to be premiering at the Palms, but it's also going to go live on Vimeo, so anybody can watch it in their home. And so I think by the time we get done with the showing in the theater, I don't know what my social media is going to look like, right? It's going to have like that first wave of people is going to have completed watching this film that very few people have seen, that we've been working on for years and years and years. So I'm pretty certain that this is a good movie, but you never know. You never know. Like, there's a part of me is like, what if people hate it? But I don't think they will, but I'm just neurotic enough to have that voice in there.
How long have you been working on this?
The first idea of it, the inkling of it, came about 10 years ago after Iowa Nice came out. Changed my career forever, my life forever. Trying to figure out what were we going to do next. And so had this idea to do a documentary on Jack Trice and Nile Kinnick and use them to kind of dissect why we picked the people we picked to be our heroes. But we just weren't ready as a film troupe to make a feature yet. And so that idea for a Hawkeye Cyclone mix morphed itself into more Iowa Nice Guy videos, Hawkeye Nice and Cyclone Nice. And those are the videos that ESPN liked, that they eventually asked us to be on their air doing 2 years of college football comedy content. And then it was about a couple of years after that that we picked up the idea again to do Halls of Heroes, which was the original title of the Jack Trice, Nile Kinnick documentary. And then not too shortly into actually beginning principal photography, we realized we just have way too much material to fit both of these stories into one doc. And so we had decided, we're going to split these up. We're going to go with Nile first. And that's how we got here today.
Why'd you pick Nile first?
Well, I thought it was going to be easier. Jack's story, I thought, had just some more challenging topics that we had to cover. And there's since Jack is one generation prior to Nile, there's less material on Jack. So I thought that was going to create more work. But in fact, I was wrong because the mountain of letters, diary entries, photos, game reels, all of that stuff, there's just so much of it to go through to create a 90-minute documentary on Nile that I think that the Nile documentary was the harder of the two. I guess we'll find out, but I'm pretty sure that is time-wise. And that was the impetus. It was like, okay, yeah, we'll do this one. It seems a little more straightforward. Boy, I think we were quite wrong.
Like a lot of things, right? Like
yes.
you think you're choosing the easy route, and actually you're choosing the much more challenging route.
Yeah, Tim, if I knew how long it was going to take to make this documentary, I never would have started. I wouldn't have.
You mentioned principal photography earlier, so that sounds like something that happens right at the beginning.
Yes.
So is that the first inning there, in baseball terms? You got to talk to me like I'm an idiot here, Scott. Mm-hmm. So when does principal photography start?
Once for this documentary, principal photography was when we sat down with our experts.
But was that like in 2017?
Yes.
Was that
It was roughly 6 years ago or so. We did kind of, let's see, what is it, 2022 now? So it'd be about 2016 or so. We would have sat down with Mike Chapman and Tom Lidd and then Nile's first cousin, Don Bice, who we can talk at length about. But those were the first people we sat down to talk with. We had done a little bit of research on our own, but we knew we wanted to talk to the experts first to give ourselves a roadmap. Utilize those individuals who had done so much work before us to figure out what questions are still out there that haven't been answered. And the quickest way to do that was just to talk to these people. So that's when we began. We ended up, we wanted to have this film feel more epic. And so we put our experts in big cavernous locations. We did Mike Chapman's interview at the State House Library, the beautiful library.
You can see that.
And these are just subtle things to hopefully give more scope. And then we did...
you did one in like a barn.
Don's. Yeah, we did a nice barn outside of Adel.
God, that's a good-looking
That's a wedding
barn.
venue. And then the Tom Lidd one... We had Kinnick Stadium booked that day, and we were going to film him essentially on the field, and it rained. So we found, enough space between the elevators, gave ourselves a little bit of distance, and the big eye is frosted into the to the window. So that's our smallest space. It still is pretty good though. But that was kind of our principal photography. And then after that, went back and just kept doing research and trying to find answers to questions.
What's the biggest surprise that came out of the movie of what I learned about Nile Kinnick's standpoint? Because he's one of the top 5 most famous Iowa athletes of all time, if you're an Iowan.
Yeah, I would put him in top 5 famous Iowans ever.
Yeah.
Outside of sports. He might be the most famous when you factor in his time. Now, modern times are just different than back then.
Is Johnny
right?
Carson count?
I always claim him. It's unfortunate he went over to
Is Carson
Nebraska.
number 1? Not to.
Yeah. No, I mean John Wayne is probably number 1.
Yeah, there you go.
It's probably John. It's just one of
Herbert
those things.
Hoover.
Probably, if you're factoring in today, I think more people know Nile Kinnick across the country than Herbert Hoover.
Really?
I think so, just because of football and that Heisman. Every year at the Heisman, they always mention Nile's speech, right? And as much as presidential history is a hobby of mine, and I can name all of the presidents, I also know that presidential history is not something a lot of people can't name 5 presidents.
This is an interesting topic. I'm curious to see what our audience thinks are the 5 most famous Iowans.
Yeah, that's a good topic. I mean, certainly, yeah, Wayne and Carson's
I know.
We could debate
both
that,
of those guys. Are they real Iowans or?
Yeah, I mean, John Wayne lived here long enough. I think we could go.
Well, I'm claiming him.
Yeah. Oh, he's definitely an Iowan. Yeah. Definitely. Carson, that's a tough one. I mean, Ashton Kutcher's pretty dang famous.
Ashton Kutcher's really famous.
And I have been out to Los Angeles and palled around with Tom Arnold for a while. I'm telling you, he's so famous.
Tom Arnold is?
I know. It's weird because now, a lot of people, I've got to know him and know how big his heart is and everything, but he's a joke to a lot of people. And so I don't think people take him seriously.
Thing, right?
Right. And that's the thing. But that was such a big deal. And then True Lies was a thing that just solidified him. But walking around Los Angeles with Tom Arnold I was shocked. I mean, everybody knows him. I mean, all ages, all races, all ethnicities. They're like, it's Tom Arnold. It's just crazy. So he's in the top 10, I think.
Whoa. You think Tom Arnold's in the top 10 most famous Iowans?
I think he is.
Man.
He was so relevant in pop culture for a while.
I haven't thought too much about this.
I know, me neither. I'm thinking off the cuff. If I sat down with pen and paper, I might find out that I'm a fool, or I should amend that I'm even more of a fool than I actually am by saying that.
Like Jason Momoa.
Jason Momoa
is like leaps and bounds more famous than Tom Arnold. Right? He's Aquaman.
Right now he is. But in 20 years, like Tom Arnold's been famous since the early 90s.
But Tom Arnold hasn't done anything of relevance
which
since
is crazy.
That Schwarzenegger movie, True Lies.
Oh, he did the stupid. He had a few hits.
Best damn sports show.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that.
I actually liked him on there. Yeah.
He was very good. And I need to sit down and make a list of this once we get past
we
the
should have prepped. This should have been our prep.
Let's do this podcast together, too, and just talk about who the most famous Iowans are. Because, obviously we're forgetting a lot of people outside of sports. I mean, Herbert Hoover I wish was up there, but I just don't think he is. And Kate Shelley's not up there, although that's a great story, too. I'm trying to think off the cuff here we're missing some big ones, but
yeah,
Ron Livingston, Elijah Wood,
Elijah Wood's big. Well, who's the guy in the acapella movie? Adam DeMamp?
Adam Devine.
Or Adam
he
DeMamp, I think was his name in Workaholics.
And Jefferson White is on
yes.
He's on
Yellowstone.
Yellowstone, thank you.
But like Jefferson White, Adam Devine, or I don't know if Adam Devine's from like Omaha or Council Bluffs. It might be a gray area there.
I think it is a bit of gray. But
we'll do another pot on this. We'll do another
we got to do this anyway. We're getting off topic. Anyway, the point is that Nile Kinnick, especially back in 1939. He was one of the most famous people in America.
Bob Feller.
Bob Feller.
Connecting it to Nile Kinnick here. Bob Feller is more famous than Nile Kinnick. Dan Gable.
Here's what's crazy. So Bob Feller and Nile Kinnick played American Legion ball together.
Right.
And we had a section in our film where we were going to talk about Bob Feller and his connection to Nile Kinnick. We went to Cleveland. We shot the statues of Feller. We shot around Progressive Field, and we really tried to capture a lot of Bob Feller stuff because we thought, oh, we're going to have a section on Bob Feller. But then we realized we have to do so much explaining on who Bob Feller is because modern audiences, outside of baseball fans, they don't know who he is. He played so long ago. What was it, 47 he won the World Series? And so all of a sudden, so the feedback we were getting was, this is interesting, but you're having to stop the documentary to explain who this person is. And he's an incredible person. But I don't think he's more famous.
Wait a minute.
I don't.
Wait a minute. I think Bob Feller's more famous than Nile Kinnick.
Maybe to baseball people, maybe. Then that would be the case. But Nile is still, because of Kinnick Stadium. That keeps him relevant every year, every fall. His name is
so unique and recognizable.
Yes.
But does that change the fame of the person or just make his name more unique and recognizable?
I think those two things are somewhat the same.
Okay.
Like when you get to know, it's really name recognition, right?
Yeah.
It's like, do you know the name Kinnick? Yes. Do you know the name Feller? Yeah.
This is hurting me.
I know.
This is hurting my heart, Scott.
And it should. It's the same thing for Herbert Hoover. Like, he was president of the United States. There's not been that many people who have gotten to be president of the United States. And our memories can be so short. And there are so many people, right? And there's so many great people. It's hard to keep them all straight. But having a building, this is why so many rich people have buildings named after them, right? Is because it is a thing that will carry your name from generation to generation to generation. Now, in Cleveland, is Bob Feller more famous? Absolutely he is.
This is why I always say, if I won the lottery, I will pay as much money as I need to have, the most prominent baseball fields in Iowa just named Flattery Field.
That's a good name, too.
Right. The University of Iowa's baseball field, Flattery Field. Iowa Central's baseball field, Flattery Field. Principal Park. I won the lottery, right? So I at that point I can do.
You're the same way as me. I would name all the theater stages, Siepker stage,
yes.
And just really get it out there. The Siepker Hall sounds pretty nice to me. Somewhere on the campuses, I do what Jacobson did. He put his name. He's got a building on UNI, Iowa State, and Iowa, and Drake. Like, that's what I would do. I get a building on every campus.
A non-sports fan actually brought Jacobson up recently, and there was like, have you ever heard of like this Jacobson guy? And I was like, well, is it the guy that, like the training facility at Iowa State and all the buildings? Like, yeah, I think it's the same guy. It's like, well, no, I don't know him, but I'm sure he's doing really well.
Very generous.
Okay, so is Feller in the documentary at all?
No. We ended up not having him in just because we did – the first cut of the film was over 2 hours. We ended up cutting it down to 90 minutes. And so each minute is so valuable.
Why?
And we just couldn't find a way to seamlessly put it in there. Because really they weren't like best friends. They didn't they didn't pal around as they got older together. They had this really cool moment where they played a little baseball together. Now was the catcher and Bob was the pitcher, which is really cool to have those two people doing that. But outside of that, Nile didn't write about Bob. Bob was certainly asked about Nile later in life, and so we have clips of that stuff. But Bob had already passed away as well before we started this project. So there are ways that we maybe could have done it, but it just, whenever we tried to put it in, it just slowed the film down and stopped the progress we were making as we were building and building and building.
So you mentioned earlier that every minute is valuable. And I've heard that, studios like to have their movies, at a certain time, whether it be 2 hours or 90 minutes or whatever it is, so they can play it more in the theaters, right? You can get more showings in a day with a 2-hour movie than you can a 2-hour and 40-minute movie, right? And that was kind of the reasoning in maybe a generation ago of why big studios wanted to have their movies at 97 minutes or whatever the time was, so they had the math done. We can have it at 8 showings a day at that point. Why is every minute valuable for you if you're not planning on a long theater run?
Yeah, it is. It's just viewer experience. And what does the story tell you it wants to be? I could make a 4-hour Kinnick documentary, but is somebody going to watch that? Are they more likely to watch a 90-minute documentary or a 4-hour documentary? You have your diehards who are going to watch 4 hours, but I think we serve Nile's story better by making it
more succinct.
Yes, more succinct, and you get to the point. And that I'm going to slaughter the Maya Angelou quote about people don't really remember what you say; it's how you made them feel. And there are so many facts in our 90 minutes about Nile, so many thoughts about him, like that you've probably never heard before, so many photos you've never heard, certainly probably haven't seen his handwriting in that way, all the letters. There's so much in 90 minutes, it's already, you're not going to remember it all. And so to pack even more in can get to a place where you're not serving the story in the best way that you can. And I think for this, having a 2-hour version and seeing the 90-minute version, as much as I loved the other 30 minutes, I have to begrudgingly admit the film it's a better movie at 90 minutes than it was at 2 hours.
Do you think streaming platforms have made documentary filmmakers lazy because everybody is in search of more content, more minutes to post? And so now all of a sudden, starting with maybe the Last Dance documentary series, which was 10 episodes. Then we have an 8-episode one on Derek Jeter. And all of these documentaries, which probably could be 90 minutes, are now 5-part documentary series. And they're just, a lot of them aren't very good.
You have, there certainly is that need for content. And I think in like an example, in just my personal opinion, the Obi-Wan series felt to me that it was on Disney Plus on Obi-Wan Kenobi. I thought that would have been better as a 2-hour movie than as 8 hours. Yeah. It felt in times that they're stretching gratuitously. Every story is different, and the story will reveal itself to you how it wants to be told. At least I adopt that philosophy. And so when you have a subject matter as big in scope as Michael Jordan, and the interest level is that high across the world, then yeah, you have an easier way of filling out 10 hours. But to do that with Nile Kinnick, who, as we sit here, we can't say that he's the number one most famous Iowan of all time, right? He's on a different scale than Michael Jordan, but it doesn't make him less valuable. It just means that you have to approach it in a different way than you would about Michael Jordan, and really try and get to, since Nile's not around, do the best job you can to reveal who Nile was as the person, to try and just remind people that Nile, as inspirational as he is now to people, he's even more inspirational when you reveal that person, who he is.
Are people going to come away from this documentary learning a lot of new things about Nile Kinnick? Or is it going to just reiterate all the stuff that we already know?
It will reiterate the stuff that you know, but mostly out of 90 minutes, I think for 87 minutes you're going to be learning something you didn't know. And
that's kind of exciting.
It is.
And I'm not a Hawkeye fan at all, but like, you think you know a guy.
Yeah. And what do you think of first when you think of Nile? I'm just interested to hear. List out the 2 or 3 things you think of first.
Heisman Trophy speech.
Yep.
Parted his hair a little bit towards the center of his head.
He did,
which
yeah.
kind of ran in the family, apparently. Governor's grandson.
Yes, that's right.
And died in a plane crash.
Yeah. And so like those bullet points, we cover those things. And he was a football player, right?
And Bob Feller's catcher. I mean, that's kind of one of those trivia questions that most Iowans know.
Yeah, and the thing is that with our documentary, you're gonna if you didn't know that stuff before, you're gonna hear about it. But even like his Heisman speech, we break that thing down because most people have heard it. They don't know what the heck he's saying. Like, what is the croix de guerre? Like, most people don't know what that is. And what was Nile really saying that day? And why did that catapult him into being one of the most famous people in America in 1939? Like, on par with, like, one of the commentators at the time said he's competing with Shirley Temple as America's new favorite personality.
Wow.
That's an incredible thing for a guy from Adel, Iowa to be able to accomplish. And he did that with that speech. So we give the context for that. Who was he talking to? Why was it such a big deal? Nile was not a guy who would stick to sports. He didn't. And that speech is example 1A. He was an extraordinary person. And you're just going to learn so much about his upbringing. Kind of figure out, you'll learn more precisely why he became the person he did from his family, but also being reminded of that zeitgeist. What was going on in the world is very turbulent times. The things that he loved to do. I mean, the fact that he played baseball, basketball, and football at the University of Iowa. We had to cut this out of the film. It's like there's stuff we had to cut out. His nickname was June. Like, when he was a little kid, they called him June running around town. Like, that's, like, to me, you don't think of Nile Kinnick as a June, but they called him June. And it's just, we just really try and highlight it. So we take, to stop rambling so much, there's so much you're going to learn. And it's not that we discovered all this new stuff. It's just that we're putting it in a way that you've probably never seen before, and it's the most easy way to digest it. And you'll be like, wow, I've never seen that photo before. I didn't know this about him. And then we did find out some new stuff to bust some of the myths that are out there about him, and to reveal the man instead of the legend.
Ooh, I like that. How much money does it take to make something like this? Like, do you have to privately fundraise for this? Do you go to people, or are you just pouring all your own money into it, or both and?
Yeah, this thing takes more money than we had. To answer that shortly, the reason it took so long to make this documentary is because fundraising was hard. Fundraising for films is very hard, especially in this state. People aren't used to the idea of donating to film or investing in film. It's a foreign concept. And also we are still in the shadows of the tax film credit scandal from 2009, around that area.
I do not know about that scandal.
Yeah, Iowa had the best tax film credits program in the entire country. And we were having major motion pictures being made. Forrest Whitaker was making a film here, Adrian Brody. Mira Savino was here as in one of those films.
Is that when the final season got made?
Yeah, all that. There was this, all of a sudden, because this was the cheapest place to make a film in the country. And it was wonderful for our economy. Unfortunately, there were some people who took advantage of it. And that got revealed. And we could do a whole podcast on just the tax film credit scandal, but then Governor Culver decided he was just going to immediately shut the whole program down. And then there were a bunch of lawsuits, of course, because producers had already invested money and spent money here, and that left a really sour taste, not only in the mouths of Hollywood producers, but in the mouths of Iowans, because if there's anything we don't like be taken advantage of. Mm-hmm. And so...
Was it Iowans that took advantage of Iowans?
There were some LA people, but it
coastal
actually,
elites.
Yeah, but it also was like some Midwest film producers as well. So it wasn't just that, but it was. There's a whole host of reasons why it got off the rails, but whatever the actualities of it are, the practical results are that it's still an uphill battle here to make film. And we're trying to change that, and that's one of the purposes of this film. So film, and also I'm a Midwesterner, and I'm an Iowa kid. I don't really like to talk about money, and fundraising's not, I don't like it, but it's a necessary evil. So I was only able to raise enough money to cover our expenses. So we had Dr. Richard Deming step up, the late and great Brian Chittenden stepped up, Tim Rachel Scheib stepped up for us twice, and then we were able to use that money to get a matching grant from the state of Iowa, the Greenlight Grant, which is the only relic we have left of the it's this new resurrected film program. It's very small, but Produce Iowa is the state government's film program now, if you will, and then we got a Greenlight Grant. So. And then I've had to put some of my own money into it. But that's just to cover our expenses. We haven't been able to pay ourselves anything. And because of that, not compensating ourselves with time, the reason it took so long to make the doc is that I am very lucky that businesses approach me to help tell their stories on camera. And I'm only in maybe 15% of the videos I produce. So like I do a lot of, like the National Pork Board, I've done probably 20 or 30, maybe more videos for them over the last 5 years. I'm not in any of them. I'm just producing and creating that content for them. So anytime a client would step up to have some work done, of course, that had to take priority because that was what paying the bills was for. And so we'd have to wait. It'd be 5-6 months sometimes between us touching the project.
So with that being said, is there a chance here that this thing does well and you guys make some money off this thing?
That's the hope. Honestly, not just for crass reasons or practical reasons of being able to be a good business person, but we need to prove that profitable film can be made.
Right,
in
to make
state.
the Jack Trice film.
Yes.
To make whatever the next project is for your group.
Precisely, Tim. This film needs to be profitable to show the people that I will try and raise funds from. And I don't know how I'm going to do that quite yet. In a couple weeks, I'll sit down and really figure out whether or not we're going to be nonprofit or how we're going to figure out how to get the Jack Trice film funded. But if we do get it funded, because Kinnick has proven to be successful, not only in a high-quality film, but that it's profitable, right? And I always hate talking about art and the bottom line, but if you're going to do it for a living, you have to. You have to do those things. And so Trice, if we can get it fully funded, will take months, not years, to complete.
So Palms Theater, starting tomorrow, which is Wednesday the 24th.
August 24th. Nile's number. 24.
Yeah,
Who
nice.
would have picked that? Who
but
thought
then the
of that?
Vimeo,
Yeah.
Do you pay for it on Vimeo?
Yes, so it's beyond Vimeo. You can stream it onto your televisions. It's in a lot of smart TVs already. You can download the app on your smart TV or get it on your phone. You can stream it through your Roku, however you say it, or Chromecast.
How much does it cost?
It's going to be $19.99,
Okay.
and then you'll purchase the film, and you'll have it. You can watch as many times as you want. And so that's where we're at this point. Of course, I want everybody to jump on board right away. I'm sure that as every film does, as we get farther, a couple months down the road, there'll be some other options for people. But for now, we're really trying to hit the Vimeo because Vimeo it's the best platform for independent filmmakers. They give you the best cut. They let you control things. There are other platforms that if we gave the film to, which it's been offered to, we don't get to set the price. They get to set it. They also set when it's on, when it's taken off. And there's just so much we can't control. And what I can't have happen, to be frank, is I can't have some platform, even if it's ubiquitous in households, put it up there for $1.99.
Yeah.
Like that's not practical. I told my guys that if you give me your work up front, I'm going to make it worth your time. And so that's what we're going to do now.
What are your top 5 documentaries?
Oh, great question.
I mean, I think guys, while you're thinking about it, I think guys are into documentaries. Like guys read nonfiction, females read fiction. Yeah. Guys watch documentaries. I guarantee you my wife inside right now is not watching a documentary right now. And especially over the past, 10 years or whatever, when guys of our age, when they're mid to late 30s now, it seems like I end up watching more documentary type stuff than I do fiction or movies. And but I didn't grow up watching documentaries. I feel like the only documentary I watched when I was a kid was Ken Burns' baseball doc. Like that was the only one that I can actually remember from when I was a kid. But now they're more mainstream.
Yeah, and there's so many more of them, and a lot of that is because they're cheaper to make, and so we have a lot more options. But Ken Burns is the godfather, and in my list, as I'm thinking off the top of my head, his Civil War is so good. I mean, gosh, are all of them? I mean, jazz, baseball is good. World War II is incredible.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think outside of that. Some more modern ones. My Octopus Teacher.
You like that one?
Won the Academy Award maybe 3-4 years ago.
I didn't vote for it. I watched it. I didn't get it.
Oh, interesting.
I heard a bunch of people talk about it.
Yeah.
I watched it. I was like, did I pick the right one? This is what people are talking about?
It's different, and I think as you watch more, at least I probably am biased towards those ones that are a little different. Not to take anything away from Ken Burns. I mean, when you watch the Kinnick documentary, you're going to see a lot of Burnsian approaches to documentary work. We've modified a little bit. Ours is a little more folksy. Our narrator is of the voice of the filmmaker, not a voice of God, all-knowing and whatnot. And it's also my voice.
You.
So there's that.
Definitely not all-knowing.
Yeah, but it is. I'm trying to. Having some brain farts on what I've seen recently, but
I wrote mine
so
down,
many of them.
just,
Please do. Yes,
yeah.
and I can.
So, but
yeah.
as I was writing them down, I thought this is I feel like my list is pretty. I don't know. Picking the
typical.
Typical, but I don't know if typical like here everybody's got the same 5 favorite documentary films because it's a weird conversation, but
right.
Super Size Me was the one that got me into docs. I watched that one in college, and it was so great. I love that the filmmaker involved himself, similar to how I like to do things here on the podcast. Like, I like to be the caddy in a golf tournament and then do a podcast about it. Like, I like to throw myself. If I were a documentary filmmaker, I'd be doing the Super Size Me type stuff. That
one was a little too gross for me.
Really?
Yeah, it was
I loved it.
I know, it just made me a little sick.
Yeah.
Like, just watching it's like, oh, that's gross.
I get that.
Yeah.
And that's part of what kind of kept me coming back. Because I also feel
You're a
like
glutton for punishment.
Yeah, I mean, I go to Culver's like once a week, right? It's like, I know,
it's good,
but I'm still going. I liked the Ken Burns baseball doc. It's hard for me to shake that one just because so much of what I know about like 1920s baseball comes from my visuals of how Ken Burns put him on the screen.
Yeah, that probably is. Whether it's your favorite or not, I think it's probably critically the most important sports documentary of all time. It is so. It's obviously a huge topic, but and what is it? 7 parts, if I remember right.
Yeah,
it's it is. Oh man, it changed the game in sports documentaries.
The way, like the Gas House Gang, they spent a lot of time with the St. Louis Cardinals Gas House Gang, and my brother and I would just rewind and watch how Dizzy Dean and Dazzy Vance and those guys and they interacted in a dugout, and it just felt I don't know, it felt so real the way he did it.
Yeah, and yeah, some great photos. Just that baseball doc it truly is great.
Euro Dreams of Sushi.
I never seen that one.
Oh God, you've never seen Euro Dreams of Sushi?
No.
Well, it's on my top 5,
okay.
so you know it's good.
I know.
Scott.
You're gonna have to. Yeah, I'm gonna have to.
I
write
think
that
about
down.
it often.
Okay.
I'm not. You watch it.
Okay.
And then text me
right.
about it. Searching for Sugar Man.
I was just gonna say that one that's fun.
That's fun. It's.
Yeah. And what a story.
I mean, it's
wow.
It's like anybody could. I shouldn't say anybody, but just capturing that story, it's so unbelievable that it plays like a scripted movie almost. You're like, no way, right? And then you have the built-in soundtrack that comes along with it. It's a beautiful movie.
Beautiful is a good term. What a discovery. I'm really jealous of that.
And then I put The Last Dance on there too because it really kind of captivated sports America during the pandemic.
That was the coolest aspect about it. I had issues with that one because I don't think they ever showed Michael Jordan missing a shot in that documentary. And I was kind of like, and they didn't get into some topics that wouldn't have made him look good. But again, you have to know that it was his production company. He had some control over that. So it wasn't quite as revealing as I would have wanted. But boy, anytime that you can have a communal experience like we did, especially at that time, to be connected with so many people because we were watching the same thing, it's really a throwback. just to the 50s and 60s when there weren't that many channels and we were all watching the same thing. And yeah, that's what I really liked about The Last Dance.
What I liked about it too is the build up of thinking, hey, there was this film crew that followed Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls in 1998 for the entire season.
97, 98.
And all of that footage nobody has ever seen before. And you're like, wait a minute. He's the most famous athlete in the world, probably still to this day. And there's all this stuff that nobody, you think you know a guy.
Yeah. It tells you how powerful he is.
Oh, yeah.
Because he was able to keep that under lock and key until he was ready.
So that was my top 5. The other thing I would throw out there is I think what got a lot of folks into documentaries, at least sports fans, is the 30 for 30 films and what Bill Simmons did over there.
Yeah.
They hit it out of the park with all of those. It's hard to pick favorites. I mean, there a lot of them.
Yeah, the
are
Bo
really,
Jackson
really good.
one is great. There's
Right.
a lot of them. As you're talking, a couple other ones came to mind that have been recently. The Academy Award winner, Free Solo.
Oh my gosh,
That was incredible.
I saw that in theaters.
And the cinematography is incredible. Of course, what Alex pulled off is that's, I think, maybe the greatest athletic feat in the history of humanity. I know that sounds like an overstatement, but what he did to Free Solo El Capitan is, it has to, if it's not the biggest or the greatest athletic achievement in the history of the world, I don't know. It's in the top 5. It's got to be number 1. I can't think of anything more. It's incredible. That's so hard. But how they got the cinematography, all those cameras, I mean, it was just not only a really interesting subject matter, but it was shot so well. It was beautifully shot.
I didn't know if he made it or not. Like, going in,
Right.
like I was like, I don't know anything about this guy. I heard that you got to see this movie, so I purposely stayed in the dark, and then I was convinced he was going to die, and so I watched a lot of that movie with my hands over my eyes because the way they shot it, to your point, made my stomach drop a couple of times. Where it's like my heart was racing at 120 beats per minute because I thought this guy might die.
And film that's able to create that visceral response is just, it's hard to come by those stories. And when you do, you're doing a disservice if you can't create that response for the audience. But then another one is Grizzly Man, Werner Herzog's Grizzly Man.
That guy's a weirdo.
Oh, my goodness. Timothy Treadwell. And what I loved about that film was the incredible, I said incredible too much, but the genius choice to take the audio that they had, the audio recording of Timothy getting eaten by the grizzly bear. They have it. And almost every other filmmaker is going to say, we have to put that in the film. And Werner Herzog, one of the greatest directors of his generation, decided, you know what we're going to do? Instead, I'm going to put the camera on somebody who has headphones on and they're listening to that audio. And you don't hear the audio, you just see the reaction. And that is a masterclass in how to most effectively tell a story. Because I'm guessing, I don't know, I haven't heard the audio, but I'm just guessing that the audio is so much more terrifying when you see the reaction to it than actually hearing it yourself. It's that Jaws situation, Spielberg, you keep the monster in the water for as long as you can. And so I just thought that was an incredible, incredible choice. But yeah, there's so many great movies out there.
That guy was a goofball.
Oh, to go and live with grizzly bears? Yeah, you're a goofball. You are a goofball.
That's the ultimate, there's this great documentary movie about this guy that lives with grizzlies. Oh, really? Yeah. How's it end?
One way.
Yeah, I mean, but to your point, that's kind of what makes a great documentary, too, is sometimes the concept is, super simple. Like Euro Dreams of Sushi. It's about a sushi master in Japan. It's like, yeah, a dime a dozen, right? It's like, you kind of got to watch it.
Yeah, you have to have interesting characters, and that's one of the things with Nile's life is that I think a lot of people have this Disneyified idea of what Nile's life was like, idyllic. And I can understand why he has all-American good looks, and he was all the big man on campus. But when you get down to examining Nile's life, it was far from Disneyified. I mean, it was just there's so many struggles, and that generation had that. When you're born at the end of World War I, you live your entire life in the Great Depression, and you die in World War II. That's a tough.
Right.
That's a really tough lot that you drew there. And Nile, in all credit to his family, were able to stay positive even when they lost the farms and had to leave Adel. When Nile pretty much couldn't play his junior year because he had a hurt ankle. And that how frustrating that is, especially back then. Freshmen couldn't play, so you only had 3 years of eligibility. There's just so many things, and then you just look at Nile's life. Sometime after you see the film, Tim, we'll have to I don't want to give away too much. Maybe we'll have to do a deep dive on the film. But there's a sense of Nile's life that there was always this great potential, and then something always stopped the greatness from actually being achieved to its nth degree. And that happens over and over and over again in Nile's life. And I think that's what makes this documentary interesting is the time period in which Nile was able to be a great person in.
I can't wait to watch it. And similar to what I was saying about like Free Solo, I kind of don't want to do the deep dive Google of Nile Kinnick until I watch it. Yeah. Because to your point, I told you my 5 bullet points of Nile Kinnick earlier, and I kind of want to just keep them there and see what else I learn. I'm a little bit upset that there's not going to be more Bob Feller, but
in the sequel.
Yeah, the sequel.
Or we might just have to do a full documentary on Bob.
That would be good too, because Bob was a war hero as well.
He's got a great story to tell, and we have way more video and audio of him. I mean,
that guy talked.
Yes,
he never shut up.
He loved the sound of his own voice.
Yeah, similar to you and I.
That's the only thing we have in common with Bob.
Jack Trice. I'm almost shocked that hasn't been made yet.
That's exactly what I feel about the Nile project. Is like, now that I see the film and I see how much great material you have, I'm like, how has nobody ever done this before?
Like how's this not been a feature film? With Jack Trice.
I feel like there's always been talk, or as long as I can remember, of making a dramatized traditional movie on Nile's life.
On Niles,
yes. There up until a couple of years ago, I know there were some people trying to fundraise for that. But to make a historical documentary is so hard, and it's so expensive. And I think maybe this documentary will help motivate people and wanting to get that done. But if I were to guess, I think Jack's story is more made for a dramatized traditional movie setting. Yeah. But that also is still also going to be extremely hard to raise the tens of millions, if not $100 million, to make that film the right way. But in documentary form, Jack's story, I'm so excited to share that story. We have discovered so much new stuff. We've spent a lot of time in Hiram, Ohio, where he grew up, Cleveland, Ohio,
so
where he went to high school. We're about half done with it.
Oh, wow.
And the thing about Jack's story is because he was a generation before Nile, there's just, as I mentioned before, which is not as much material, clearly. And being a black man in the early 1900s of this country, just records weren't very well kept. And obviously, even then, photos were less taken than they were in Nile's generation. So the way that we're, at least I feel, and the team feels, that we're going to be able to get to know Jack and understand his importance is to examine his legacy. So we have half of the film is probably biography, and then the other half is the struggle, the 20-year struggle to get Cyclone Stadium named Jack Trice Stadium. Because without naming the stadium Jack Trice Stadium, Jack his life just isn't as well known. His death isn't as well known. It's just like we talked about with Nile, having Jack Trice's name said every college football Saturday in this country is something that's truly extraordinary and something he never would have believed would have happened. In 1923, before he died, he said, if we told him, hey, Jack, I just want to let you know that, you're going to be the only black man to have a stadium named after, a big-time college football stadium named after you in this country. He wouldn't have believed it. And to have that happen that story is so good. And we've gotten interviews with people who were involved at the time, and I'm really excited to tell that story and what it can all teach us about ourselves and how we, getting back to the original Halls of Heroes idea, we ask the questions, like, is Jack have a stadium named after him if he doesn't write that one letter? Is he not have a stadium named after him if he doesn't die? It's hard to know all these things because Jack died in 23. We don't know what he would have accomplished. Right. It's the same thing. Like when Jack died, he was married to Cora May, and she was young, and she had moved to Ames with him, and they were so in love. And his loss affected her life. She went on and got remarried, but she held on to that love for him. Like, it's a true loss. The same way, like, Nile dying when he did is so sad because his potential is his ceiling, his career ceiling was being president of the United States. I'm not overstating it. He writes about wanting to get into politics. His grandfather was governor of Iowa. I think his floor was Senate, being in the United States Senate representing Iowa. But not only to the people, and Don Bice, who is his first cousin, who we have in the film, only time he's ever sat down to be interviewed this extensively. Don was there. He practiced with Nile. He watched Nile eat prodigious breakfast. It's an amazing. Don's in his mid-90s now. There's that human element, right, that loss, but also the loss to this state and to the country. And I know it sounds nuts. I know it sounds nuts for me to say because we don't know. Maybe he doesn't survive the war, even if he doesn't die in the training accident. Like, maybe he does, but let's say he does. If he survives World War II and he gets into politics and he has all this fame behind him already and his great morals and ethics, there's a chance that in 1960 it is not John F. Kennedy versus Richard Nixon. It is John F. Kennedy versus Nile Kinnick, the Democrat versus the Republican. And can you imagine if somehow the Republicans' favorite in the 60s and 70s was Nile Clark Kinnick Jr. instead of Richard M. Nixon? And how does that affect things like Vietnam? I don't know what Nile would have done in those situations. I do know this, though. There's nothing like a Watergate scandal if Nile Kinnick is in office. He's not going to stand for that. He would rather lose the election than commit such an egregious act against his country. And so, again, I know I'm recognizing that there's so many what ifs, but Nile was on the track to get married, have a family, start a law career, get into politics, run for being a public servant, and being on that track. And he was so good looking and such a good speaker. It's not an outrageous thing to guess that he could have been president of the United States and not only changed the course of this state and this country, but also the world. And again, I know how that sounds. It sounds like I'm trying to sell a film, but I'm not. That's just getting to know Nile how I have in the last 5-6 years. I truly believe that was his potential.
Isn't it amazing just the letters they wrote? Jack Trice, Nile Kinnick, same thing. It's like, man, these guys could really write a letter. At 21 years old, these guys, not only the penmanship aside, they had great penmanship, what most everybody did back then, but they could just really formulate a thought and put it on paper in a lot better way than most of us can nowadays.
Yeah, that paper and pen, they were sacred, right? And it was how you could, it was a lot of times the best way you could communicate with people. And you'll see Nile's writing style and his poetic nature at times in the documentary. And the thing about all those letters is that we're so lucky in Nile's case to have a treasure trove of letters. But that's such a small percentage of all the letters he ever wrote. The family made their first donation to the University Archives in 1959 of Nile's to the Nile collection. And they had culled through a lot of it. So we just got a sampling of what they chose. So it's important to recognize that what we have from Nile is what his family decided to
throw
leave
away.
in. Yeah. And his mom, she told the university, and you'll see this in the film, Frances, his mom, is fairly silent and not in the film. And we would have loved to have her in more, but she decided after Nile died, she was so heartbroken, she destroyed their correspondence together.
Wow.
And so we don't have letters between Nile and his mom and from his mom to Nile. We have a lot from Nile to his dad and to his brothers and to his friends, but Frances she got rid of all those letters. And she was the driving force behind his Christian Science faith. And out of all the letters we have, he barely mentions being a Christian Scientist. But that must have been a big part. And I'm wondering if we had those letters to Frances, if we'd have a better understanding of how important his faith actually was to him. He just didn't write about his faith in his war journals very much at all. And the only time it comes up really in the letters is when he hurt his ankle his junior year, and he refused medical treatment because he believed in faith healing. And so he's going to fix the ankle by just not going to doctor, but praying. And his coach at the time, Earl Tubbs, sat him down and was like, are you a Christian Scientist? And Niall writes this exchange. He's like, yeah. And Niall writes, I think he was just trying to confirm something he already knew. But we just, outside of that, we don't have much about how important his faith was to him. And I think a lot of that was left to those letters between his mother and him that are lost forever.
Fascinating. I'm going to change gears on you.
Please do.
The Field of Dreams TV show.
Yeah.
Where were you at with this prior to it kind of running into some roadblocks here recently? Was this something you were excited about, that you wanted to pursue, you wanted to be involved with?
Yes, I would have. It would have been a dream to be involved in that. Unfortunately, I mostly see myself as an actor, and I would love to be an actor in that show. But the reality of it all is that in this business, if you're not living in L.A. or New York and you're a union member, you're probably not going to get an audition. Even if you are, those auditions are very hard to come by. But the way that I'm ever going to get in a show like that is if I'm producing it, right? Or my other projects make my platform so big that an agent's willing to sign me while I live here, because I'm not moving to Los Angeles.
But wasn't part of that was that they were going to use a lot of, like, most of the extras, a lot of the folks, a lot of the baseball guys were going to come from locally. So did you look into that at all?
Yeah. So yeah, believe me, it would have been a great boost for our economy and for filmmaking here, for all the reasons I told you before, just proving that you can. And I'm sure in some way I'll find a way to be involved, because I think the project's still going to happen.
You do?
Yes, with Michael Schur connected, who is one of the most successful sitcom writers there are, story runners. I mean, people mostly know him as Mose from The Office, but he was also involved in developing that show, writing that show.
Parks and Rec,
Parks and Rec,
Nine-Nine. I mean,
I'm forgetting a big one. Happy Place, or whatever that one with
Kristen Bell and Ted Danson.
Yes, Ted Danson, and Kristen Bell is the lead in the Field of Dreams.
Oh, really?
TV series. Yeah.
Was that announced?
No, I don't think it has been announced, but I think it's. But
yeah, hey, it's out there.
Yes,
now.
It is now. I haven't seen a press release or anything, but as of the last time that this project was a go, which I still believe it is, Kristen Bell was the leader or she was the lead. And the show's going to take place across multiple decades. I think like 3 or 4 decades. And so it's a very expensive show. And they're building the state. They're going to build the set here. Like, all this is tremendous for the state. And I think it'll still happen because Michael Schur's involved. And if Kristen Bell is still connected, that helps a lot because she's got star power. I think that the project's still going to happen. It's a great intellectual property. And so it's got good value to it. And I think NBC, Comcast, who owns the IP, will make sure that it finds a new platform. It's just right now we're in a strange transition period for streaming services. So they just need to find a new home. And I think with the Field of Dreams and with Michael Schur and Kristen Bell connected, I feel confident the show will film next summer. Okay. That's no guarantee. Awesome. Everything I just said could have changed by the time we started filming here.
Next summer's better for me. I think,
okay.
I had the twins this year, so my arm wasn't in great shape and throwing in the backyard, but I think I can get down to playing weight next year.
They get you out there.
Been in communication with the folks putting the baseball teams together, for it. So, and the casting director, or not, I shouldn't say this, the lady that's in charge of running the baseball stuff. There's a ex-major leaguer that I've been in touch with, and then there's a lady that did the Space Jam 2, and she did the new Adam Sandler movie, the basketball
Hustle,
which was really good. And so I've been in touch with her on it. And she's Catholic, so I let her know that I'm Catholic.
Oh,
too.
you got the in.
Yeah, it's like, I'm not a Christian Scientist. I'm Catholic.
No, you're Catholic. Yeah.
Okay, what are you watching right now?
I've been watching Kinnick the documentary over and over again.
Have you seen anything
I just
good?
Finished,
I
just
all
finished Better Call Saul.
Okay.
I just finished Better Call Saul, which I thought was a really good show. I think technically it might be a better show than Breaking Bad from just academic point of view. But it's not, because Breaking Bad just changed the game.
Yeah, you needed Breaking Bad to have Better Call Saul.
Yeah, to be able to sit through those. And I enjoy the slow burn. I think it pays off in that show, but it's a very slow burn. Breaking Bad is a slow burn, but nothing compared to Better Call Saul. Those first 2 seasons are really, it's slow and deliberate, but that's because you have already invested in those characters, right? And so you're willing to invest that time. So I just finished Better Call Saul, and have I seen anything else? That's kind of what I've caught up on recently, and the list is long. Finishing a film, and the amount of detail you have to pay attention to, and watching over and over and over again, it makes it so you don't really want to watch anything else when you're done working.
Are you going to win any awards for this?
I don't know how to answer. It's so much that's not in my control. I think it's a really good film.
Like, how do you win award? All I know is the Oscars.
Yeah,
that's all I know. So, how do you?
We won't win an Oscar. You have to play in a certain style of theater in a certain locations to be eligible for the Oscars. Nile's story, just. I just don't think it's what the Academy is probably looking for right now. And the reason I say that is because we submitted the film to Sundance and to South by Southwest and to a couple of the other really big film festivals, and we weren't accepted. One, sports documentaries are not the darlings of the artistic community, and I understand that. And two, we don't have any name. Like, nobody knows my name out in Sundance, Utah, right? Like, that's not happening. Like, nobody, we don't have any big names.
You got to get Tom Arnold plugging you.
Yeah, well, yes, and hopefully he will. I think he probably will. But the fact is if film festivals are trying to bring people into their festival as well, and so to get into them, it helps a lot if you have a huge name. Like, if Morgan Freeman was our narrator,
right, that
would make us much more likely to get into those film festivals. But if Morgan Freeman was our narrator, this film would feel totally different, and it wouldn't work.
Right.
It just wouldn't work. So now I think the Jack Trice story has more of a chance at those things. And that film probably won't have a narrator. It'll be a very different style than the Kinnick documentary. But we'll submit it if we ever get it done, by getting the funds raised, and we'll see what happens. So much of this, and this business is so nasty that you cannot judge your success based off of your popularity or by the awards you win, because it's kind of the same. It's like a popularity contest a lot of times. You just have to control, make a good product, put it out, and then you got to get a little lucky.
What is it already a success in your mind, or is there some level of follow-up here, commercial success, making your money back? Like, obviously those are checkpoints, but you made a film, one that you're proud of. So you're already, the hay's in the barn, right?
Yeah, I am happy with the film. I mean, there are 1,000 things that I would change about it, and once I change those 1,000 things, I would have another 1,000 things. Like, there's just, the expression is, art is never completed, it's only abandoned. And I could spend another 10 years on this and make it 2% better, but that would be a disservice to the film. And so we're going to put it out, and I am proud of it. I think the film is good. I also think the film has a much bigger scope than people are expecting. I think they're thinking, I have a sneaking suspicion, because I'm this way. If somebody told me, somebody made a documentary about an Iowan, and there are a bunch of Iowans who made that documentary, I have kind of a biased idea in my mind of what that film is going to look like and sound like. And we really wanted to not make that film. We came at this from a national perspective. I don't think it feels like a bunch of Iowans made a love letter to the state of Iowa. And it's not even, it is a sports documentary, but it's maybe only 25 or 30% sports. And I've loved that the people I've showed it to who don't know anything about Nile and even hate football walk away loving the film.
There's probably a lot less drone shots of cornfields in your version of this documentary than the LA version of this documentary.
That is a great point. We do not have, do we have any, I don't think we have any shots of corn.
Thank God.
We have drone shots of the stadium. We went out to the ocean and we shot drone shots of the Pacific. We shot in the Gulf of Mexico. Some drones of that, and a few other drone shots. There's like maybe when Nile was driving through the South, we got an old-timey car that he would have driven a sedan there, and we got drone shots. There might be some corn like next to the road, but and Nile's family, his grandpa Kinnick, they owned a farm outside of Adel where Pinoche Farms, or Pinoche Winery is now, if you know that, by the golf course. And but Nile's dad and mom, they helped out on the farm, but they weren't necessarily farmers. They were more farm administrators. And so, Niall had to work on the farm, but he also had to go work on a ditch digging crew and deliver the paper. So we put those things in the film.
I'm excited for you, Scott. I'm excited that you came over tonight, the night before the premiere. It's just cool to see.
Yeah, just sit out here on this nice deck of yours.
Yeah,
and the insects were quite loud at the beginning, but they've gone off into a nice nuanced chorus.
It was way louder 30 minutes ago than it is right now, but it's a beautiful night. Who do you think the most famous Iowan living in Iowa is today? Final question.
Living in Iowa, I'd guess it's Kim Reynolds.
Yeah.
Or Terry Branstad.
Terry Branstad.
I mean, he's America's longest-serving governor.
Yeah.
I said that right. America's longest-serving governor. And then he was ambassador to China. I mean, but once they're out of office, I mean, it's tough. I also realize I mean a lot now that we get to the end of the podcast. I've said it like 14 times. But
I kind of want to do like a top 100 list, like just to see who number 88 is. Of most famous Iowans. Cloris
Leachman is somebody who's up there. I know she just passed away, but she is one of the most famous comedic actresses in the history of this country. And if you're it depends on how you figure out famous. Are you just going by today? Because Doris Day from Denison, Iowa, was one of the most famous actresses of her time.
Mm-hmm.
But now, who knows Doris? The people in Denison do.
Right. Yeah, well, like Zach Johnson had the same staying power as Cloris Leachman.
No.
You don't think so?
I don't think so. Well, maybe inside the state of Iowa, but outside of the state, no. I mean, golfer,
he's a golf Hall of Famer.
Zach, this is incredible. Zach won 2 majors as not one of the most talented guys on tour, okay? He's not probably top 100 most talented guys on tour. But he, through being a smart player and a great wedge player, he was able to win at Augusta National and St. Andrews. That is insane. And whenever I think about that, I am overwhelmed by jealousy.
I got to get him on the pod.
Yes, you do. And he's a super nice guy. And but yeah, he's up there. It is a really good question. I'm going to have to put more time to it.
Part 3 of the Siepker Moonlight Graham show will be most famous Iowans.
I like that. Yes, and
we
then
may do it outside. We may not.
And who do you think is the most famous Iowan currently living in Iowa? I don't know if it could be anybody, but
I think it's got to be
the governor.
Well, God, I don't know.
People are yelling at the
I think
podcast machine
Branstad's
right now.
more famous than Reynolds.
Yes.
But Reynolds has more name recognition today than Branstad because Reynolds is like in the news every day.
Every day.
But Branstad
is kind of he's retired. And
15 years from now.
Yeah, he keeps out of
I think
spotlight.
Branstad's in more history books than Kim Reynolds is.
And now Tom Vilsack is on his 3rd term as Secretary of Agriculture. I mean, that's that's a big deal.
I'm trying to think of who. How far do you get down that list before it's somebody that personally?
I mean, it wouldn't be too far before we got to Keith Murphy, Ed Wilson.
Right. Is Keith Murphy an Iowan at
Kevin
this point?
Cooney.
I feel like he's adopted as an Iowan.
For sure.
Basically, what I was asking there is, if Keith Murphy's an Iowan, how far is he down that list? That's kind of what I was getting at.
In Central Iowa, the most famous person outside of the governor is Ed Wilson. Okay?
You think it's Ed Wilson?
Yes. I've been on RVTV with him for 5 years, and when Ed Wilson walks into a small town bar, it's like Jesus just walked in.
He's bigger than Murph.
Yes. Now,
Really?
Murph is not too far behind. The difference is that Ed is much more extroverted, okay?
Yeah.
And so Keith is fine, just staying in the corner and you're having a quiet conversation. Ed will make you feel like you're the most special person in the world when he's talking to you, and it's not disingenuous. He's genuinely interested. He's just so much more of a people person than the rest of us on RVTV. But yeah, Ed in Central Iowa, Ed's number 1.
So how long do you have to live here before you're considered an Iowan? Because Ferentz...
Oh, duh. I didn't even think about it. Of course, Ferentz and Campbell...
But, I wouldn't
are
consider
up there
Campbell an Iowan, but Ferentz has been here over 20 years now.
Well, and he was here with Fry.
Right,
before
so
that.
I would almost consider
he's
Ferentz an Iowan, and he's probably number 1.
And Campbell's coming up on year 7 or 8?
Yeah, but I feel like, man.
It seems like he's on the Ferentz plan. Have all the NFL rumors at the beginning, going to go somewhere else, and then you just stick around.
It sure seems like that.
But yeah, I mean, those are the people we should have thought about. But Kirk Ferentz, Hayden Fry, Johnny Orr, they're at least in the top 50 most famous Iowans of all time.
But I guess we have to define what.
Right? Oh, you know who? Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark is. I mean, nationally, when you have Kevin Durant, and LeBron James saying your name, you're a big deal.
She is a big deal.
She's the most famous.
She's got
currently the most famous athlete in Iowa.
She's the only Iowan with a decent NIL deal. Everybody made a big impact about name, image, and likeness at the high school level here recently. It's there's only one Iowan that has a decent NIL deal, and it's Caitlin Clark. Like, no offense, Jordan Bohannon, but he was like selling fireworks. Like, that wasn't a good NIL deal. He was doing car wash appearances and pizza joints and stuff. It's like those, like, if you weren't a kid, you wouldn't take that deal. Now, Caitlin Clark's got a legit Hy-Vee doing
because she's a legit star.
Because she's a legit star.
Yeah. So she'd be up there as well. I'm glad as we've verbally processed this, we've gotten to a few of the people I think individuals listening to your program have been yelling at their speakers for the last hour, like, how could you forget about Kirk Ferentz?
Yeah, but it's just a question of, is he an Iowan or not?
I had this discussion with Andy Fales because he grew up in St. Louis, but he's lived here now for over 20 years.
Fales is an Iowan.
And I say, are you an Iowan? And he's always a little wishy-washy about it. At some point, I'm going to convince him that he is a full-blooded Iowan now.
Well, will they ever be full-blood, though?
I think at this point, yes.
But it doesn't change your blood.
No, but who wants to be known for Missouri anyway?
Yeah, he's a great St. Louis Blues fan.
He is. He is that.
Scott, thank you for coming on the Moonlight Graham Show.
I appreciate you having me a lot. I really like talking about this, and then wherever this conversation goes, like it did last time, 3-4 years ago at this point. You do a good job, Tim, and I appreciate you letting me have some of your time.
Thank you, Scott. By the time we release this, hopefully you'll still have a chance to buy a ticket for the Palms to go see Kinnick, the documentary. If not,
it may be playing in Iowa City. I can't announce that right now, but just check my social media. We will probably be doing a Iowa City run at some point during the season, so just follow me on social media.
But if not, buy it on Vimeo.
Vimeo.
$19.99.
$19.99, and you own it forever.
You own it forever. Thanks, Scott.
As an airplane flies overhead, we say goodnight.
I'll be honest with you, I did not know that Nile Kinnick played both basketball and baseball as well as football at the University of Iowa. So after speaking with Scott, I looked up, what stats I could find on Kinnick's baseball and basketball careers. There were no stats that I could find on Kinnick's baseball career. He only played during his freshman year at Iowa. And from what I could find, there wasn't much out there on Kinnick from that 1 year he did play at Iowa. But he does have a page on baseballreference.com. There's no baseball stats to back it up, but if you go to baseballreference.com and search for Nile Kinnick, his name will pop up, which I thought was interesting. From a basketball side of things, he played 2 seasons of basketball at the University of Iowa. He was Iowa's second leading scorer during his sophomore year and the 15th leading scorer in the Big Ten that year. So it sounds like he was a decent basketball player as well, but there wasn't as much. I'm sure Siepker or others can dig more than I found. But football, it seemed like, was always the number one sport for Kinnick, especially at the University of Iowa. And some of those stories, it's amazing how much is still out there from Kinnick's football career. Like you can go back and read the game recaps from the Purdue game and from the Michigan game and from the Notre Dame game, and I would encourage you to do so, especially that Notre Dame game, which my grandpa Nielsen loves to talk about still to this day. So thank you guys for listening to the episode. I'm hoping the bugs weren't too much of an annoyance for you guys in the background of this episode. But special thanks to the Moonlight Graham Show team, my brothers Neil and Andy, our producer Brian Sandvig, artwork by Brennan Gargano, and of course the trusted co-host Tommy Griffin, who also does all of our write-ups. That is the best podcast team in the business. And thanks to you, the Moonlighters, for subscribing, for leaving us 5-star reviews, for commenting on social media, for following us. We really appreciate it. Couldn't do it without you. Have a great week, Moonlighters.
It's Moonlight Graham, yeah. It's a pretty good program, broadcasting to the heartland. Sports stories for the everyman. It's Moonlight Graham, yeah. Please follow us on Instagram. You're loving us on Twitter too. You download every pod we do. It's Moonlight Graham.